All right, biologists, this video about water, subtopic A.1.1, theme A, unit and diversity of the new syllabus of biology for IB. Now, we are only going to talk about the standard level part. The additional higher level content will be on a separate video. So water as a medium for life. So life started in water. Water is needed for all our chemical reactions. All biological reactions happen in water. For example, hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is when you have a large molecule like polysaccharide and you break it into smaller molecules like monosaccharides. And you do that by adding a water molecule to break the covalent bond between the monomers, between the smaller monosaccharide parts. Protein folding also depends on interactions with water. Some amino acids are hydrophobic and they try to escape this contact with water. So the protein folds in such a way that the hydrophobic amino acids are hidden from water, and that gives the protein its shape and therefore its function. Membrane organization, also the cell membrane depends on the properties, the hydrophilic parts and hydrophobic parts of phospholipids. So water, if life was not based on water, it was based on something else, the organization would be different, the membranes would be different, proteins would fold in a different way. So we only work the way we work because we are based in water. Even land organisms carry water with us. We are full of water in our bodies, inside our cells, outside our cells, even eggs. We only conquered the land territory when we developed the amniotic egg, a type of egg that can resist desiccation. Eggs like reptile eggs or bird eggs, different from, for example, amphibian or fish eggs. Fish eggs on dry land, they would dry out and the baby would not develop. That's not the case with birds, for example, or other reptiles, because they have this special egg that can carry water into the land territory, onto dry land, and not dry out. So here we see the organization of a cell membrane. It depends on the hydrophilic part that attracts water and hydrophobic tails that are repelled by water and attracted to each other. And an example of an egg that carries water. So we have here all these membranes and a water reservoir, right? So we have the amniotic fluid carrying water. And even mammals, we have this amniotic fluid. So we are adapted to live on land. Hydrogen bonds as a consequence of polar covalent bonds within water molecules. So here we have a water molecule, right? This big red ball here, this represents oxygen. This is oxygen. And these two white balls down here, they are hydrogen, right? So they are hydrogen. And what, this is terrible. Okay, hydrogen. There you go. And what happens is hydrogen and oxygen, they have different electronegativity. What does that mean? They want electrons differently. They pull electrons towards themselves with different strength, right? It depends on a bunch of things that I will not go into detail. If you're taking chemistry, you can check with your chemistry material. If not, even good old Wikipedia is there if you're curious. But the point is, it's like a tug of war with the electrons in this covalent bond. So this is the covalent bond between hydrogen and oxygen, but the electrons are not evenly distributed. They would be, for example, between two identical atoms like oxygen and oxygen. on a O2 molecule, they pull with the same strength, so the electrons are evenly distributed and the molecule is not polar. But here, oxygen pulls electrons more strongly. Besides that, oxygen also have two pair of electrons that are part of oxygen atoms as they are. So you have more electrons on this side than on this side relatively. So that makes this side of the molecule more negative. It's not like there is a full negative charge, but it is slightly more negative than this one. And this one, by contrast, is more positive. The distribution of electrons within the molecule is not even. It is uneven. It is not symmetrical. And because of that, the oxygen-hydrogen covalent bond is polar. Can we visualize that better? Yes, we can. So here we have the values of the electric charge. You don't have to know that, but you can see that this is not zero. This is more than zero. It's not quite one yet. It's not one positive electric charge, but it's more than zero. It's positive. And here it's less than zero. It's not quite -1, but it's less than zero. And you can see here in the map of a distribution of electric charge that you can see here, the region around oxygen is more negative, and this one here around the hydrogens is more positive. What is the consequence for that? The consequence, let's erase all this stuff. The consequence is that one water molecule can attract other water molecules via this difference in charge. Here is more positive, here it's more negative. They attract each other. They attract each other. Let's put here a white highlight. So this dots here. So every time you draw this type of connection between water molecules, you cannot use a solid line, right? So I'm even going to erase this one. It's not a solid line. It's a dotted line, always a dotted line. And this is called, well, not this. This is called a hydrogen bond. And they are super, super important. Hydrogen bonds are represented by this dotted line between the hydrogen of one water molecule towards the oxygen of another water molecule. There were questions in the past that asked you to draw hydrogen bond between two water molecules. You have to know that it's the hydrogen of one and the oxygen of the other, because this is slightly positive and this is slightly negative. It's not a full positive or negative charge. So we draw here a lowercase delta positive or lowercase delta negative. Consequence of that, cohesion of water molecules due to hydrogen bonding. Cohesion is this binding of the two molecules of the same time, any two molecules of the same time that attract each other. This is called cohesion, and water molecules are attracted to each other and bound by hydrogen bonds. This doesn't happen, for example, with non-polar molecules because they do not have this force of attraction between them. This is why, for example, water is liquid at room temperature, while, for example, oxygen is not, because oxygen or even methane, methane has a similar mass to water, but it doesn't have these hydrogen bonds. Therefore, it escapes in the form of gas. But water, because the molecules are hanging on to each other, it stays in the form of liquid at room temperature, and that's fundamental for life, right? So it also creates surface tension. The surface tension is the tendency of a liquid to reduce its surface area to minimize the interface with another medium. What does that mean? Here you have water on a leaf, and it has this shape, the circular shape. Why do drops of water look like spheres? Because spheres have the least amount of surface area. in relation to their volume. That means you have the least contact between water molecules and air molecules. Water doesn't want to be in contact with air. Water wants to be in contact with more water through hydrogen bonds. So it forms this shape to reduce the contact with air. How does that work? Real quick, you have the forces of attraction and a water molecule here in the middle of the liquid. It's being pulled towards all the sides by other water molecules. But so since it's being pulled from every side, the forces cancel each other out, and it's all good. The net force is zero. But here at the surface, at the interface, you don't have these molecules up here, so the net force pulls it down, and this repeats around the entire droplet, and it causes it to curve into a ball. How do living organisms take advantage of that? Water striders. These insects are called water striders. They walk on water, not by floating. It's not a matter of difference in density. It's not they're floating on water. They're stepping on this quote-unquote membrane that is formed on the surface of water due to hydrogen bonding, due to surface tension, and they push down on water, but the water molecules, due to surface tension, they push back. The water strider is not submerged. The feet are not submerged. This is not like a boat. Boats float because of the push. Water pushes it up because the boat is pushing the water out. So the forces cancel each other out, and the boat stays afloat. Here, it's not the same. Here, the legs of the insect are not submerged. They are completely on the surface. They're completely on the surface. Cohesion is also important for plants. You have the xylem, for example, which is this type of vessel that plants have. Just like we have blood vessels, plants also have their own vessels. One of them is called xylem, and it transports water from root to shoot. So from the roots up to the leaves, and one water molecule pulls on the other. So as one molecule goes up, let's say this water molecule is going up, it's going to pull on the other one, and they will all help each other move upwards towards the leaves due to cohesion, right? Well, adhesion, we're going to see later, adhesion is the attraction of water molecules to, in this case, the inner walls, the walls here of the xylem vessel. So it's also hydrogen bond because this is made of carbohydrates. It has loads of oxygen and hydrogen, but this is not the same type of molecule as water, right? So it's not cohesion. It's not between two molecules of the same time. It's between a molecule of water and a molecule here of carbohydrate. So it's a different type of molecule. It's not cohesion, it's adhesion, but the hydrogen bond is the same. The principle is the same. What else? Examples that are not on the book. Lacrimal canal. You do the same thing kind of in your eyes. So you have here the lacrimal gland, here the tear gland. It produces tears that come this way. And then you have this part here of your eye. It has kind of like the drain ducts that go to your nose. So as water is being drained towards your nose, it pulls on more water, and you have this flow. Tears on your eyes, they're not just sitting there, they're flowing through your eye, cleaning your eye all the time, and this happens because of cohesion. What else can we say? Well, mosquito larvae. So these are larvae. This is one larva, this is another larva. Collectively, they are larvae. Mosquito larvae are often, they often live on the surface of water here, under the surface, but they have these ducts that allow them to breathe, and they're kind of anchored by these siphons here due to surface tension. Adhesion, like we said, it's the attraction of water to polar materials, right? How does that impact us? Okay, we know it's not with hands like this, right? But it impacts plants, for example, because of this effect here, the capillary effect. You see the water level is here, but if the walls of a tube are thin enough, the water can grab on the walls and climb up. The thinner the tube, the higher the water will climb. And because of that, xylem vessels are very thin. It helps water climb from the root to the leaves. Adhesion also impacts roots in a different way because water adheres to soil particles. This is called hygroscopic water. It stays stuck on the soil particles. This water is not available for plants. This water is just stuck to the soil particles. So if the soil only has this much water, the plant cannot absorb it, right? So as the soil gets more hydration, now the plant can absorb this water, and via capillary action, the same principle with the tube, water can move through these spaces between the soil particles, and even if the root absorbs the water around it, via capillary action, more water will be drawn towards the root, and the plant can absorb more water, even if it absorbs all the water around it. And here we have a very saturated soil. The soil is full of water, and there's a bit too much here. Right, so you have the roots. Here's the saturated zone where the soil is full of water. You have the groundwater, but via capillary action, water will still climb up, and your roots have to reach this area so it can continue absorbing water. Solvent properties of water linked to its role as a medium for metabolism, because water can dissolve so many things. At one point, it used to be called universal solvent. It was like when I was in school, it was called universal solvent because they said it could dissolve anything, which is obviously not true because you are not dissolved in water. Your glass is not absorbed in water. Your water bottle doesn't dissolve in water. So it's not really universal. So we don't say it anymore, but it dissolves loads of things in your body, and that's a good thing, right? So especially hydrophilic polar things or charged things, they are water soluble, but large non-polar hydrophobic molecules are not. And that's also important because your cell membranes have to be hydrophobic so it doesn't dissolve away in all this water in your body, right? So why is it important? Because xylem transports salts, minerals from the soil. They are dissolved in this water that the plant sucks up through the root. And the phloem, the other type of vessel, will transport sucrose and amino acid, not sugar, not glucose. You say sucrose, and that's important, sucrose. And amino acids are transported through the phloem vessels from the leaves to other parts of the plant. And this is possible because they are water soluble. In animals, for example, our plasma in our blood, it transports salts, glucose, some vitamins, amino acids, because they are water soluble. We don't transport gases in the plasma. Oxygen needs to be transported in cells, in red blood cells, because gases are not really water soluble. They have low solubility, especially in warm water, like in our blood. It's not very soluble. So you need those cells to transport oxygen for you. Lipoproteins. these guys, they help transport hydrophobic molecules because you need hydrophobic molecules. There are hydrophobic vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin E. You have fats and cholesterol that you need to make hormones, to make your cell membranes. So it is very important to transport those as well. They're part of your diet, they're part of your body. So how do you transport them? You have these special molecules, special structures called lipoproteins, and they are composed of lipids, fats, and proteins, as the name suggests, and then they are transported in your blood. Physical properties of water and the consequence for aquatic animals. Buoyancy. Buoyancy is the property of floating, right? So buoyancy, like a jellyfish, it has neutral buoyancy. A jellyfish, the forces on top and the bottom of the jellyfish, they cancel each other out. So the jellyfish is just floating around. It doesn't have need for a skeleton because it doesn't have to fight gravity. Buoyant force counters gravity, and the jellyfish doesn't need a skeleton. Bony fish, bony fish have a skeleton, but they can control where they are in the water column. If they want to swim up or down, they have an organ called swim bladder that can be filled up with gas and make them less dense, and therefore they float up a little bit, or they can absorb this gas back into their blood and make it less dense, and they can sink down as they wish. Sharks don't have a swim bladder, but their liver is full of fat, and that is less dense than water, so it helps, makes the shark less dense. And cyanobacteria, they are microorganisms. They are incredibly important. They make loads of the oxygen that you breathe, and because they make so much oxygen, they have gas vesicles that help them float in the water column. So it's super important. Now, viscosity is the resistance to flow, right? So you have here this syrup that is very thick, so it flows very slowly, has like this thick gel, almost gel-like aspect to it, while oil flows much easier because it's less viscous, right? So hydrogen bonds increase viscosity, but also solutes increase viscosity. So seawater is more viscous than, let's say, fresh water. Thermal conductivity, because water transfers heat very well, you can use your plasma to transfer heat from parts of your body to other parts. So your muscles make the heat, but you have to heat up your brain, for example. Your plasma will carry this heat and warm your brain up. At the same time, you can use that as radiator. You can use some organs like the elephant ears are radiators to dissipate all this heat that the body cannot dissipate. Well, the ears have a huge surface area to volume ratio. They're used as radiators, right? On a different note, there are exams like medical exams that look for heat as an indication that there could be a cancerous mass or tumor mass in that region. So here you have a normal exam, and here you have this heat mass where it shouldn't be, as an indication that potentially this is something you should look up. And because water transfer heat very easily, endotherms like this guy, they produce their own heat, but they need this heat, right? So how can you keep your body heat in an environment like cold water environment, like South Pole, for example? Well, you need a barrier between your muscles and the water, and this insulator is blubber. Blubber is a very thick special layer of fat that marine mammals, I should say, and birds, so penguins have blubber, seals have blubber, you have the seal of approval right here. You have whales have blubber to insulate them because water is so good at thermal conductivity that it can absorb all this heat away, and the animals could have hypothermia. To avoid that, they have this layer of fat called blubber as an insulator. And specific heat capacity is the energy required to raise the temperature. So water can absorb loads of energy and not change its temperature so much. That means it has a lot high specific heat capacity. In like summer, you go on vacation, you go on a holiday to the beach, you step on the sand and the sand is super hot. You go to the sea and the sea is cold. Why is that? If both sand and the water are under the sun, why is the sand so hot and the sea is not? Well, because the sand has a low specific heat capacity, means it requires little energy to increase temperature. So all this energy from the sun is increasing the temperature of the sand really high, but the sea isn't so hot because the sea requires a lot more energy to increase temperature, so it stays cool. At night, on the other hand, because the land will cool down, the water is still a little warm. You have this breeze coming from the sea during the day, but towards the sea during the night. And that's kind of cool, right? So here we have a little chart here with the properties and the consequence comparison with air. So you can pause and take a look, write it down. Examples here would be these two guys. How do they, I want you to think how these properties of water will impact their lives, how they are adapted to their environment. And that will be it. Next video, we're going to talk about the additional higher level subtopic of water.